Because it is such a beautiful occasion to have the two of you together. Because the youth are not only the hope of their families, but they're the hope of the Muslim ummah. The ummah is waiting for you. The conditions of the ummah are so pathetic that we're looking forward for a new generation, a generation that is Rabbani, will be able to elevate the suffering, and will be able to lift up, and will be able to raise the banner of the deen, and will be able to reduce the suffering of those who are suffering on earth. Because this is what happened ultimately when Islam is not in the scene. People will be suffering on earth, and this is what we're seeing nowadays. We're seeing so much mischief on the earth. We're seeing so much wars. We're seeing changing in the climate that affect people's life. So let us find out how important youth are in the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah Azza wa Jal in the Quran addresses the youth by fitya. And this is a term that is so lovely that we would like to explore in some details. We know for a fact that وَخَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَطْوَارًا. We are created in different stages. We were dust, and then we became infants, and then we're born. We become fetus, and then we're born to this life as infants, and we go after that in the toddlerhood stage in our life, and then the childhood, and then we become adolescents, and then after that we become adults, and then we become seniors. Allah Azza wa Jal have described all these stages in different locations in the Quran, and described how He created us from ضعف, ثم gave us قوة, ثم جعل من بعد قوة ضعفا. How we are born weak. This is what happened to us when we were first born in our childhood, and then we gain strength and autonomy as we grow. But eventually, once again, we will be going back to the weakness, to another weakness in a different stage in our life at the end of our life in seniorhood. So this is something that no one can dispute, and therefore Islam pays too much attention to the most critical stage in the lifespan of a human. If you look into the percentage of the youthhood, which starts from the teen's life to the 40 years in one's life, you will find it to be the longest stage. It's almost first 40%. If a person were to live 60 or 65 years, which is the average living for a human or Ummah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, you will find that 40% of our lifespan is in the youthhood, the most productive period in our life. And that's why the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam emphasized strongly on the importance of this particular phase in our life, وَعَنْ شَبَابِهِ فِيمَ أَبْلَاهِ, and about his youthhood. How did you use it? How did you benefit from it? How did you live in it? And that's why when we go to explore the different meanings to shabab, we will find in English there is a term called adolescence. And if you were to explore the word adolescence in the dictionaries and in the terminology of psychology, you will find that adolescence refers to a phase in the human lifespan in which is full of turmoil, full of challenges, full of difficulties, as if we're this stage in a human life is a very difficult, very miserable, very complicated stage that needs to be ignored so that the person can pass it on to another stage in his life. And quite the opposite is what youthhood is described in the Quran. Even if you were to look in the adolescence, the translation to Arabic, we will find that it's called murahaqa, from rahab, from being exhausted, from being unproductive. While again, when we go to the Quran, we'll find Allah Azza wa Jal have addressed this stage in the lifespan of a human as fitya. And fitya in the Arabic language refers to youthhood, full of energy. And that's why we go to the tafsir of Al-Baghawi and exploring the reference of fitya and the context of إِنَّهُمْ فِتْيَةٌ آمَنُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ. You will find that he said on على لسان العرب that fitya رأس الإيمان. الفتية هي رأس الإيمان. And in another explanation, الفتية هي بذل الندى وكف الأذى وترك الشكوى. And in another explanation, اجتناب المحارم واستعجال المكارم. This is the beautiful understanding and meaning of fitya, which is to بذل الندى, to give the best of what you have. وكف الأذى, and to abstain from hurting and abstracting others around you. وترك الشكوى, and abstaining from complaining. And another explanation in the same context of the tafsir of the ayat in Surah Al-Kahf, اجتناب المحارم, to abstain and avoid the haram. واستعجال المكارم, and to hasten and to rush to the beautiful deeds. And that's why comes the term futuwa, means power, energy, and shahama means generosity, means productivity, means being in help and support to others around you. When we look into the definition of adolescence or fitya, and when we explore this time and this lifespan of a human, where in the teen's life it is known that youth will grow so fast in this period of time, and so many changes happen to them, both physically, cognitively, as well as emotionally. And when you look into the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal have recognized this strength in the youth and have captured it for us in a beautiful way that would make youth always be mindful that as a youth I have a lot of energy, I have a lot of power, I have a lot of potentials to make a huge change and difference in the society in which I am living in. وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودُ جَالُوتَ. Allah Azza wa Jal captured that image for us in the Quran. When Bani Israel were in hardships, when they abstained from being two followers of Musa alayhi salam, and then eventually in the critical battle between Bani Israel and Al-Amaliq, the giant, the humongous, Al-Amaliq, the people of Jalut, were humongous, huge in size. And then Allah Azza wa Jal captured to us the action of Dawood, who was a youth, who was fata, who was fatih, who have changed the equation, who have made a difference in the life of Bani Israel, who have destroyed al-taghut and changed the conditions of Bani Israel from being weak, scattered in the earth, unable to settle, unable to establish an entity for them, from being able afterwards to establish a state for them. وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودُ جَالُوتَ. Dawood alayhi salam, being youth, full of energy, full of power, full of potentials, full of trust in Allah Azza wa Jal, killed the leader of the humongous, the huge army, both physically and in number. Another beautiful incident that describes the same issue in the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam took place when Ali ibn Abi Talib, in the battle of the trench, Ghazwat al-Khandaq, and we know how difficult Ghazwat al-Khandaq was. The Ghazwa, a surah was revealed to describe its magnitude. Al-Ahzab, the Confederators, when they all gathered in huge numbers, to come and finish the state of Islam in its origin in Medina. And the Prophet ﷺ was not able to find a way to defend Medina except to build a trench around Medina, because they're unable to meet this huge number of army, 10,000 plus, which is an unusual number in the context of Arabians at that time. And then, while the two sides were in most difficult time, 3 nights crossed from the kuffar side to the Muslim side, and one of them was coming forward and announced and defined who he is, and said, "This is Amr ibn Wood." And this name would make everyone shake, because he is a legend in the history of Arabia. No one can dare to stand in front of Amr ibn Wood. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said to the Sahaba, who would go to meet Amr ibn Wood? No one would stand up. The Prophet ﷺ would repeat that many times. And the only person who would stand up and say, "I am Ya Rasulullah," is none but Ali radiallahu anhu, the teen, the young, the person who was full of energy, who was full of power, full of trust in Allah Azza wa Jal. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he knew who Amr ibn Wood is. And Ali ibn Abi Talib knew who Amr ibn Wood is. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said to him, "I'm afraid that he will kill you. You're still young." He said, "With the faith and belief and iman and the trust in Allah Azza wa Jall's power and ability," said, "But aqtuluhu ya Rasulullah." But I will kill him, Ya Rasulullah. And that's exactly what happened. Ali ibn Abi Talib came forward and stood in front of Amr ibn Wood. And he defined himself and said, "This is Ali ibn Abi Talib." And Amr ibn Wood said to him, "Ya ibn akhi," talking to him with sympathy, "I don't want to kill you. You're still young." And Ali ibn Abi Talib, the man who had believed in Allah Azza wa Jal, had full trust in Allah's abilities and power, he said to him, "But I want to kill you, Amr ibn Wood." And that made Amr ibn Wood, the legend, furious, being challenged by a young man. And then he let his horse go away, and he fought with Ali ibn Abi Talib, to the point that the dust was so high that people were not able to see what is happening. And they all of a sudden heard a big shout, "Allahu Akbar!" That made the Sahaba all shout, "Allahu Akbar," because they knew that's a sign of victory, and that's a sign that Ali ibn Abi Talib had finished his job. Allahu Akbar, to the power of Iman. Allahu Akbar, to the power and ability of the teens in contributing to the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. وَمَا آمَنَ لِمُوسَى إِلَّا ذُرِّيَّةً مِّن قَوْمِهِ عَلَى خَوْفٍ مِّن فِرْعَوْنَ وَمَلَئِهِ أَن يَفْتِنَهُمْ وَإِنَّ فِرْعَوْنَ لَعَالٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَإِنَّهُ لَمِنَ الْمُسْرِفِينَ. In the most difficult times, in the critical times in the life of the prophets of Allah Azza wa Jal, it's only teens, only youth, only those who have the power, the ability, the full trust in Allah Azza wa Jal, who will follow the prophets of Allah Azza wa Jal. That's exactly what happened to Musa alayhi salam in the most difficult time when they were in Egypt. The only followers of Musa alayhi salam were the youngsters of Bani Israel, who had full trust in Allah Azza wa Jal. They had the full confidence that Allah is going to give them the aid and support, and they will be able to make that change. And that's exactly how the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ lived their life. Look into the actions of Al-Arqam ibn Abi Al-Arqam, the young man from Bani Makhzum, and Bani Makhzum were under the leadership of Abu Jahl la'natullahi alayhi, who used, and Al-Arqam ibn Abi Al-Arqam used to host the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and the Sahaba in his house, not too far from the Kaaba, and knowing that the consequences for him to be caught doing this would be nothing but to lose his life. But he have done it, believing in Allah Azza wa Jal, believing in the rewards from Allah Azza wa Jal. Another change in the abilities and the powers and the power of young people is the emerging of an infinite power of cognition. And that's why Allah Azza wa Jal captured to us a beautiful image from the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam. إِنَّ سَمِعْنَا فَتًى يُقَالُ لَهُ إِبْرَاهِيم. When he destroyed the idols and they came rushing to find out who did this a crime and evil act in their perception to their own gods. And they said, we heard a young man called Ibrahim talking about them. And then we know what happened. When Ibrahim alayhi salam communicated with them cognitively, with his power and ability of knowledge, to let them believe with action, with proof, with evidence that what they're worshipping is none but stones that have no power, no ability. وَفَهَّمْنَاهَا سُلَيْمَانَ. Allah Azza wa Jalla also gave us another image of how Sulaiman alayhi salam, who was in his early teens, as Mufassirun, the majority of Mufassirun indicates, when he gave an advice to his father in an issue that Dawood alayhi salam realized that he had not done a good job in. When you look into the power and cognitive abilities of teens, you will find that Allah Azza wa Jal had given them a fresh perspective and a powerful cognitive abilities that would make them see things from a different perspective, would make them challenge the usual, the traditional in the society, and bring in a new perspective that will make a change, a positive change. إنهم فتية آمنوا بربهم وزدناهم هدى وربطنا على قلوبهم إذ قاموا فقالوا ربنا رب السماوات والأرض لن ندعو من دونه إلها لقد قلنا إذا شططا. Allahu Akbar. This very, very powerful act of a group of young men, of fitya, teens, who challenged the whole society around them and said that none is worthy of worshiping except Allah. And we are standing firmly and announcing that clearly and saying without any doubts that none is worthy of worshiping except Allah. As a result of their actions, as a result of their contribution, as a result of their sacrifice, they become an icon to every young man and old man and woman in the history of mankind. And when we look into the life of Maryam alayhi salam, because many of us think that everything is for boys, for males, but there's a lot of contribution of also female youth in the history of Islam. When we look into the life of Maryam alayhi salam, يا مريم اقنتي لربك واسجدي واركعي مع الراكعين يا مريم إن الله اصطفاك وطهرك واصطفاك على نساء العالمين. Ya Maryam were chosen, were selected above all the women of mankind as a result of her devotion in ibadah to Allah Azza wa Jal. As a result of her devotion to the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, she became written on an icon, Isa ibn Maryam, and the only woman in the Quran that has a chapter titled by her name, by a female name is Maryam alayhi salam. And we look into the life of the Sahabiyat and their contribution to the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, and we can't say nothing but to say how Aisha radiallahu anha preserved the deen of the knowledge of this deen through the narration of the ahadith that she have narrated from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life. وأقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه فيا فوز المستغفرين. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور انفسنا وسيئات اعمالنا من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. In a quick note, maybe we need another khutbah to explain and talk about this issue. Last week, a come across two incidents. One of them was the death of a brother who was at the end of his life because of chronic sickness. And I was personally touched deeply by his actions at the end of life. I came to him by his bedside when his family asked me to come and talk to him. When the medical team, the palliative care team, asked for me to come and introduce myself to him, I said to him, brother, I want you to say La ilaha illallah. He said, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. I said, let's repeat the Fatiha. He started reciting the Fatiha by himself. And he recited As-Salat al-Ibrahim Durud Sharif. And I said to him, brother, I want you to make a dua for me. A brother at the end of his life who was very concerned to meet Allah while Allah is happy with him. He was asking me, how can I repent to Allah at this stage in my life? And I felt being so little compared to this giant, young in age, and his belief and Iman in Allah Azza wa Jal. Contrast that with our teens who are unfortunately dying as a result of overdosage or as a result of gun violence. Contrast that with those who have no goals in their life. Contrast that with those who are living a marginalized life. Brothers and sisters, young and old, life is short. And we are being gifted with something called life. Let's take advantage. Let's benefit from that. Let's make sure that when the time comes for us, we will be able to say, La ilaha illallah, wa man kana akhiru kalamuhu la ilaha illallah, dakhala al-jannah. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad. Kama sallayta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim. Wa barik Allahumma ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad. Kama barakta ala Ibrahim fil alamin innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma inna abduka wa abidika. أبناء إيمانك نواصينا بيدك ماض فينا حكمك عدل فينا قضاؤك نسألك اللهم بكل اسم هو لك سميت به نفسك أنزلته في كتابك أو علمته أحدا من خلقك أو استأثرت به في علم الغيب عندك بأن تجعل القرآن العظيم ربيع قلوبنا واجعله جلاء لهمومنا وأحزاننا يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعل المتقين إماما. ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي وأصلح لي في ذريتي إني تبت إليك وإنني من المسلمين. اللهم فرج كرب المكروبين، اللهم اقض الدين عن المدينين، اللهم فك أسر المسلوبين، اللهم داوي الجرح والمرضى برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم أقر أعيننا بنصر دينك واجعلنا من جندك وسخرنا لطاعتك واستخدمنا لمرضاتك. اللهم غير حالنا إلى أحسن الأحوال. اللهم ارفع الظلم عن المظلومين، فك أسر الدعاة والعلماء والمشايخ في أمة نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.